Welcome back, and in this lesson we're actually going to do the set up the page layout for our actual HTML page. So in this lesson we'll finally lay out our page to match the design of the site we previewed in the introduction tutorial. Using floats, we'll position our content and images to flow based on the design that we want to accomplish, and we'll use the clear property to clear the float properties to reset our page flow for the next set of positioning. And that's an important aspect of using floats, and a lot of people haven't caught on to that, is that in order for floats to work correctly, once you set up a group of floats and things are set up the way you want them to do, and want them to appear, in order to go to the next section in float, you need to clear the ones that you previously set so that you can basically get back into normal document flow and then set up your next set of floats for the areas of the page that you're working on. So let's set up and style our page layout. Alrighty then, so I'm going to go ahead and drop out of the presentation, get back into our development environment. You'll notice we're still loaded where we left off from the last exercise. In this lesson, we'll lay out the page for our home page. So we're actually going to start laying out the content now so it flows the way we want it to flow for our home page. Based on what we discussed, we'll want to have our first image to the left of the browser window and the text flow around that image to the right. So let's add our CSS to accomplish that task. First, we'll need to add another class to our first image. So I'm going to go into our HTML document, and on that first image, I want to add another class to it. We've already got the class of size. I want to add a class called left. And I want you to get used to the fact that you can have multiple classes inside elements of your HTML document. So you'll notice now I'm actually using a class of size and a class of left. They're just separated by a space to separate our class names. So let's go ahead and save those changes. Make certain that you add that class to your first image. This is the image that goes with that first set of text. It's an important aspect of styling to understand that we can use multiple classes. I've designed sites where some of my elements will have more than 10 classes to accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish with that particular styling. That's not unusual to have multiple classes for a style. Now I want to go back into my main.css. And I want to go in, I'm going to scroll to I want to get out of that navigation section. Remember, we kept that separate. And because I normally keep my classes alphabetical, I'm going to go above my size and I'm going to put left. That's the class that we just assigned to that one image. And I'm going to give this one property. I want this to float, and I'm going to put my colon, and then I want to say float left. So I'm going to push this all the way over to the left edge of my document. Let's go ahead and save that change. Make sure you've typed that into your CSS file. If I refresh my browser window, you're going to notice now that my text that was below that image, because I floated it to the left, the text has gone over and wrapped around it to the right, and now it's just wrapping around that image. In order to properly float the elements for the next group, we'll have to clear the floats from the previous group. And that's very, very common inside of our HTML documents. We've got to set up this clear class. So first in my CSS file, I want to build a class called clear. So I'm going to come up right below my container. I'm going to build a class called clear. Open and close my curly braces. And we can clear things a bunch of different ways. We can actually clear them right, we can clear them left, or we can clear both. I tend to clear both. It's just the way I've always set these up. You don't have to, since we know that we have a left float above, we could actually just clear left. I'm going to go ahead and clear both. That's the way I tend to do this. I'm going to go ahead and save that change. It's going to have no impact right now on my document, but I am going to go and add to my HTML document. I'm going to come right down below where that article tag ends, and I'm going to add a new div. So I'm going to have an opening div tag. I'm going to give it a class that's going to be equal to clear. That's the class that we just created. Then I'm going to close that opening tag and then close the div. So there's actually nothing in that div. It's just holding the clear that actually clears my floats. And again, this is very common as we structure HTML pages. So let's go ahead and save that change. Great time for you to pause to put that clear in your HTML document, and also make certain that you've added the clear into your CSS file. Refresh your browser window. Nothing should happen because we haven't really changed anything for the rest of the structure, but we're getting ready to do that in the next part of this lesson. Alright, so now we want to float our second image to the right. So we'll be doing something very similar to what we just accomplished. I'm going to go into my HTML file, and I want to add another class, but this time to the second image, and I'm going to call this one right. And by the way, you can name these classes anything you want. I'm just using right and left because that's basically what we're doing. And again, now we've got multiple classes on that second image. I want to save that change. Make certain that you've added the right class to your second image. Let's go into our CSS file. I'm going to come down right below our S, or I'm sorry, right above the S where I've got the size, and I'm going to say right. And again, I'm just putting these in an alphabetical listing so it's easier for me to find them when this sheet becomes very large. Can't believe I just said that. When this sheet becomes very large, I put them alphabetically so it's easier for me to find them. And I just want to say on this one, float right. Let's go ahead and save that change. Refresh our browser window, and now you'll notice we've got the other image floating to the right and the text is wrapped around that. So again, it's very, very easy using floats and using this clear property to actually set up our page the way we want it to appear inside of our document window. What I want to do now is I actually want to fix the text itself because the text looks a little bit sloppy, plus I've got it way too close to this image. So let's go add a couple of small changes to our classes so we can get some padding and margin and actually space our text a little better. All right, so looking at our page, the first thing I want to do now is I want to start working a little bit with our paragraphs. So the first thing I want to do is add a class to the paragraphs themselves. I'm going to go back into the index.html file, and inside my paragraphs, I'm actually going to add a class called text format. And again, you can name this anything you want. I'm just using this name because this is basically what we're doing. We're going to actually format this text. But what's a little different here, I'm actually going to copy this class, Control-C on the PC, Command-C on the Mac, and I'm going to add that same class to my second paragraph. So anything I'm doing now to style these paragraphs is going to impact both paragraphs, not just the one paragraph. Since we've assigned that style to both paragraphs, we're actually going to impact the styling of both paragraphs. Let's go ahead and save our changes. Great time for you to pause to put that in. Now I want to go into the style sheet to set up the format for our text. So I'm going to go back into my main.css file. I'm going to scroll down below size because the T comes after S. And I'm going to put my dot, text format, open and close my curly braces. And again, we're setting up the formatting now for both of our paragraphs. The first thing I'm going to do is a text align. And I want to set the text align to justify. So I'm justifying the text now in both my paragraphs. And then I want to set a line height. So I'm actually going to put a line height of 1.2m. And what this is going to do, it's going to make it a little bit easier to read the text in those paragraphs because I'm going to build a little bit of separation between those lines. So this will justify the text in our paragraph and set up a little bit more line separation between those paragraph lines of text. Let's go ahead and save those changes. Good time to pause to type those in. I want to go back into our browser and refresh, and you'll notice now we've got this nice line where the text is even now on both right and left sides, and we've got a little bit more spacing between the actual text lines themselves. Next thing I want to do is I want to move the images a little bit farther away from our paragraphs because they're just too close. I've got the text butting up right against that border that we put on those images, and it just doesn't look well. So what I want to do is I want to go into the class where I actually did the following style to the right class, where I actually did my floats. Let's go in the main.css for the right side. I'm going to say margin left. So I'm actually going to set up a margin now on the left side of that particular image. And let's give it 15 pixels. And I want to do the same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. Control-C on the PC, Command-C on the Mac. And inside my left float, I want to do the same thing, but this one's going to be margin right because I actually want these on opposite sides. So now I've got margin right 15 pixels, margin left 15 pixels, and it's going to push that text a little bit away from our image. So let's go ahead and save those changes. Good time to pause to type those in. I want to go into my browser and refresh, and you'll notice now we've pushed that text away from our images, both on the floating image to the left and the floated image to the right. And that's what we're trying to do. We're actually trying to get a little bit of separation between the image and the text itself. What I do want to show you now is because of the way we've set up this page is responsive. I can actually resize this, and you'll notice that my images and my titles, my text, all move with the resizing of the browser window. So just by using the floats and the percentages that we used, we've actually have this page where it's responsive to different size browser windows. So in the next lesson, we're actually going to work on this footer area, because we've got this footer area down here that's kind of making our document look squirrely, and we're going to work on that next. I hope you're learning a lot. I hope you're seeing that this is really not near as difficult as people make it out to be. Setting up web pages is not that hard, especially the basics of setting up web pages. And that's all that I'm trying to profess throughout this entire series, is that anyone, can learn how to design their own web pages. It's not that difficult. And because of the way that we're designing this, it's HTML5 compliant. We're using good CSS structure. This page will load extremely fast because we've got optimized graphics. So again, not difficult to do. It's something that anyone can learn. I hope you're learning a lot, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.